Hello everybody, it's Howard, and today I am starting a new series. So I am a recreational pilot and I am a flight simulator advocate, and I am starting a new series called the FSX Road to RPL. This series I aim to provide all RPL lessons in accordance to the CASA syllabus and within the limits of my knowledge through FSX, in order to allow simmers like you and me to begin flight simulation and use flight simulation as a training tool in the correct way. I'm Howard Lau. I am 17 years old, turning 18 this year, and I am a recreational pilot. This is episode 1, the briefing of it, and it is effects of controls. The lesson objectives in effects of controls are to gain an understanding about the primary and secondary effects of primary and ancillary controls. For most, it will be their first air experience, and therefore one of the secondary objectives of this lesson is to get comfortable and familiar with the aircraft that he or she will be flying in. In our case, we will be flying a Tecnam Sierra light sport aircraft in accordance to the RAOS rules. So, primary controls comprises of aileron, elevator, and rudder. And before this course, I assume you guys will have enough knowledge to know what these three controls are. However, what exactly do they do? Well, the primary effect of the aileron is roll, and the aileron is used primarily to turn the aircraft. However, to turn the aircraft, it relies on the secondary effect of aileron, which is yaw. And I'm not talking about adverse yaw, that's something else. But I'm talking about yaw in the direction of the turn. And this is due to some force from the side that would ultimately hit the rudder, and therefore it will force the nose to yaw to the direction of the roll. And to operate the ailerons in the aircraft, it is as simple as deflecting either the stick or the yoke side to side. Deflected to the left, the aircraft will bank left. Deflected to the right, the aircraft will bank right. The second control surface is elevator, and its primary effect is to control pitch. Pitch is defined as the movement along the longitudinal axis of the aircraft. Pitch is used primarily to climb and descend. However, only using pitch, the secondary effect will only using elevator, the secondary effect of pitch will be a change in airspeed, which makes sense because we live on Earth and we have gravity, and therefore if we pitch up, we gain potential energy, so we gain altitude, but without an increase in throttle, our airspeed will drop. Same thing when we pitch down. When we pitch down, we lose potential energy. However, we'll gain kinetic energy because of gravity. And this is basic law of conservation of energy. To operate the elevator in the aircraft, you either pull or push on the yoke or the stick. You pull for the aircraft to pitch up, and you push for the aircraft to pitch down. The third control is the rudder. The rudder's primary effect is yaw, or pivoting about the normal axis of the aircraft. However, the secondary effect of rudder is roll, and usually very uncomfortable, and that is why rudder is not used primarily to turn the aircraft. However, rudder is used for crosswind corrections or to stay coordinated during a turn, and we will cover that later. And in order to operate the rudder, we are going to step on the rudder pedals, either the left or the right, in order for the aircraft to yaw left and right. Moving on to our ancillary controls. The ancillary controls are best thought as some controls that you can live without. Arguably, you can live without throttle. Glider pilots do it all the time. Arguably, you can live without elevator trim. You just have to have big muscles. Arguably, you can live without flaps, and really you can. And during a crosswind landing, we're going to use either no or little flaps. But technicalities aside, the control of the throttle will have the following effects. It will change the speed, and however, it will also change the pitch. Because consider the pilot's lift equation, where lift equals angle of attack multiplied by airspeed. If we throttle up, our airspeed will increase. Therefore, our lift will subsequently increase. Therefore, it will cause a subsequent pitch up moment. If we change the throttle and we pull it back, reduce the throttle, the lift would reduce, and therefore a change in pitch would result, and the change would be a nose down pitch angle. And you will also realize that aircraft are positively stable. Therefore, if you change throttle without touching any other control surface, it will want to chase the trimmed airspeed or the particular set airspeed. And to operate the throttle in an aircraft is not like in a car where you push the pedal. In an aircraft, you push or pull on the lever or vernier knob. And for the Tecnam Sierra or any Cessna that you will be able to fly, it would be a vernier knob. However, in a Piper aircraft, or in the very aircraft I trained in Australia, the Sling 2, it's a lever. The elevator trim is used to reduce elevator force. Therefore, the effect would be a change in required elevator force. The elevator trim may seem a little bit as a luxury. However, it's not. Trust me. Whenever you change anything in the aircraft, you will need to trim for it. And you'll always hear your instructor say, trim, trim, trim. Because trust me, with trim, you're going to fly way better. And to operate the trim in an aircraft, it's either a mechanical wheel or an electrical switch on a stick. Normally in modern day training aircraft, you'll use an electrical switch on the stick. However, some aircraft like the Cessna 172 still have the wheel as a backup, or the pilot might as well just choose the wheel because it is more precise. Flaps are movable control surfaces on either wing that will change the wing's geometry in order to change lift and drag. Flaps are used normally in takeoff or landing, and it results in a change in pitch and a change in speed due to the change in drag. However, the change in pitch depends on what aircraft you're on. Some aircraft like the Cessna 172 or the Piper Warrior, or even the Tecnam Sierra, would have an initial pitch up moment. So that's saying that if you are trimmed out level flight and you deflect the flaps without touching any control surface, the nose will pitch up. However, the resultant pitch would always be lower than that of flapless flight. However, in some other aircraft, such as the Sling 2, the Bristol, or the old Hershey Bar Wing Piper Cherokee, the nose will pitch down. Therefore, you'll need to pull up to compensate for that pitch down moment. However, in both types, the flaps will ultimately reduce the pitch angle of the aircraft. And the flaps will also result in a change in speed due to the change in lift and change in induced drag. To operate the flaps, you use a switch or a Johnson bar. Switches are normally used in modern day training aircraft. However, some training aircraft, such as the Piper Warrior, or anything in the Piper line, still uses a Johnson bar. And there are people who support either the switch or the Johnson bar, but technicalities aside, I'm not going to talk about it because I don't have an opinion. There are some rules of thumb before we begin the flight component of this lesson. Remember that every control surface movement must be smooth and small, and that means you're not really aiming to deflect the control stick or the control column as per se, but you're trying to apply different pressures in order to achieve a desired attitude. A light grip on the controls must be adapted, even if it's windy and turbulent. I don't want to see any white knuckles, as instructors say. You want to anticipate and correct for different changes in control surface movement, such as if you pitch down, you should anticipate a build in airspeed, therefore you reduce throttle instinctively. That you can train, and after a few lessons, I can guarantee that it will become second nature and you don't have to think about it. And you'll understand the value of trim. Trust me. Everybody was apprehensive about trim when they just started training. But once you start circuits, you'll realize just how useful trim is. And most importantly, have fun, and I'll see all of you in the flight section. Have fun and fly safe.